When Darnell Washington pulled into the drive-thru at 10:47 p.m. on a Thursday night, hungry from a long haul back to Baton Rouge, he wasn't expecting anything more than a couple McDoubles and a Dr. Pepper. But when the girl at the first window took his card, her eyes met his for just a second and her lips formed a single word without sound. Help. What happened next? The phone calls. The brothers who came. The standoff with a manager whose smile didn't reach his eyes. And the moment when Ashley Brennan finally trusted a stranger enough to tell the truth about the 8 months she'd been held captive, proved that sometimes the most important thing a person can do is simply refuse to drive away. Darnell Washington had been riding motorcycles since he was 17 years old, and in all that time, 31 years of highways and back roads and everything in between, he'd learned to trust the feeling in his gut. The gut had saved him more times than he could count. It had told him to slow down before a curve that had a deer standing in the middle of it. It had told him to skip the shortcut through a neighborhood that turned out to be the scene of a shooting 10 minutes later. It had told him, on his wedding day 23 years ago, that Loretta was the one, and it hadn't been wrong about that either. Tonight, at 10:47 p.m. on a Thursday in April, pulling into the drive-thru of a fast food restaurant off Highway 59, his gut was telling him something was very wrong. He was 48 years old, a long-haul trucker by profession, and a member of the Black Knights MC by choice. He was built solid, 6'1", 220 pounds, with a shaved head and a beard that had started going gray at the temples. His leather vest was worn soft from years of riding, and his Harley Road King was the love of his life that Loretta had learned to accept, came second only to her and their 2 kids. He'd stopped for food because he was hungry, simple as that. He'd been on the road since noon, delivering a load to Houston, and he was on his way back home to Baton Rouge when the Golden Arches called to him. Loretta always said fast food would kill him faster than the bike, but a man had to eat. The drive-thru line was short, and just one car ahead of him, a white pickup truck with mud-splattered plates. Darnell waited, looking at the menu board, deciding between his usual and something new. Then the pickup pulled forward, and Darnell rolled up to the speaker. Quote. The voice was female, young, flat in that way people get when they've said the same words 1,000 times. Darnell ordered his usual, 2 McDoubles, large fry, Dr. Pepper, and rolled forward to the first window. That's when his gut started screaming. The girl at the window was maybe 19 or 20, with brown hair pulled back in a ponytail and a uniform that hung off her thin frame. She took his card, ran it through the machine, handed it back without looking at him. Except she did look at him, just for a second. A flash of eye contact that was there and gone so fast he almost missed it. And in that second, her lips moved. Help. No sound. Just the shape of the word, formed and dissolved before anyone else could see it. Darnell's hand froze on his card. He looked at her, really looked, and saw things he hadn't noticed at first glance. The way her hands were shaking slightly, the dark circles under her eyes, the way she kept glancing to her left, towards something or someone out of his line of sight. He said, keeping his voice casual, quote, Tukes. Her face went blank, mask back in place. Quote, 3. But her eyes said something different. Her eyes said please. Darnell pulled forward slowly, his mind racing. He could be wrong. He could be reading too much into a tired fast food worker having a bad night. He could be about to make a fool of himself over nothing. But that word, that silent, desperate word, help. He wasn't wrong. He knew it in his gut. At the second window, a man handed him his food. Middle-aged, heavy-set, wearing a manager's polo shirt. He smiled the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. Have a good night, sir. Darnell took the bag. Thanks. Hey, is that girl at the first window new? Haven't seen her before. The man's smile flickered, just for a second. Darnell nodded and pulled away, his food forgotten on the seat behind him. He didn't leave the parking lot. He pulled into a spot at the edge, killed his engine, and pulled out his phone. Hit subscribe if you believe that trusting your instincts can save a life. Comment where you're watching from, and share this with someone who needs to know that one person paying attention can change everything. Darnell sat in the parking lot for 15 minutes, watching the drive-thru, thinking about what he'd seen. The girl's face, the word she'd mouthed, the manager's smile that didn't reach his eyes. He could call the cops, should call the cops, but what would he tell them? A girl mouthed, "Help" at me in a drive-thru. They'd think he was crazy. They might not come at all, or if they did, they'd ask a few questions, get reassured that everything was fine, and leave. And then what would happen to that girl? Darnell had been black in America for 48 years. He knew how these things went. He knew that sometimes the people who were supposed to help didn't help, and sometimes the people who weren't supposed to help were the only ones who did. He made 2 calls. The first was to 911. He gave his location, described what he'd seen, and asked them to send someone to check on the girl. The dispatcher said they'd send a unit, but her voice had that tone. The one that said they got calls like this all the time, and most of them turned out to be nothing. The second call was to his chapter president, a man named Jerome Deacon Harris. D, what's up? You still on the road? I'm at the McDonald's off 59, just past the state line. I need brothers here. Now! What's going on? Darnell explained. The girl. The word. The manager. The feeling in his gut that wouldn't let him drive away. Deacon didn't ask if he was sure. Didn't ask if he was overreacting. Just said, quote, 13, quote, 14, quote, 15 up. Darnell hung up and settled in to wait. His food was getting cold, but he didn't care. He kept his eyes on the drive-thru window, watching the girl take orders, run cards, hand back change, every movement mechanical, every smile forced. Twice, the manager appeared behind her. Both times she flinched. Darnell's hands tightened on his phone. King and Prophet arrived 12 minutes later. 2 Harleys rumbling into the parking lot. 2 brothers in leather vests pulling up beside him. Quote, 16. King asked. He was a big man, former Army, with hands like sledgehammers and a voice that could shake walls. Quote 17. Prophet, a skinnier man with braids and glasses, who worked as an accountant when he wasn't riding, pulled out his phone. You call the cops? Yeah, said they'd send someone. And, Darnell gestured at the empty parking lot. Still waiting. Prophet shook his head. Figures. What do you want to do? I want to go in there and get her out. But if I do that, and I'm wrong, you're not wrong. King was staring at the drive-thru window. I've seen that look before. That's a person who's trapped. The 3 of them sat there, engines cooling, watching the restaurant. The drive-thru line had thinned to nothing. It was late, almost 11:30 now. But the girl was still at her window, still going through the motions. Then the manager appeared again. He said something to her, gestured toward the back of the restaurant. She nodded and stepped away from the window. Darnell's gut lurched. Darnell didn't hesitate. I'm going inside. If you're enjoying this story, hit that hype button right now. It's free, takes a second, and helps this video reach more people who need to see it. Now back to the story. The inside of the restaurant was almost empty. Just an elderly couple finishing their coffee in a corner booth, and a teenager mopping the floor near the bathrooms. Darnell walked to the counter, King and Prophet flanking him. 3 large men in leather vests filling the space in a way that made the kid with the mop look up nervously. Can I help you? The girl at the register was different from the one at the window. Younger, maybe 16, clearly uncomfortable with the new arrivals. "Yeah, I need to talk to your manager." "He's in the back. Is there a problem with your order?" "No problem. Just need to talk to him." The girl hesitated, then picked up a phone and spoke into it quietly. A moment later, the manager emerged from the back, the same man who'd handed Darnell his food, with the same smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Gentlemen, what can I do for you?" "The girl at the drive-thru window," Darnell said. "The one who was there 20 minutes ago. I'd like to talk to her." The smile stayed in place, but something shifted behind it. "I'm not sure what you mean. We have several employees." "Brown hair, ponytail, thin. She was working the first window." Darnell stepped closer, using his size the way he rarely did. "I'd like to talk to her now." "I'm afraid that's not possible. She's on break." "Then I'll wait." "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. You're disturbing my customers." The manager gestured at the elderly couple, who weren't paying attention at all. Quote 42. The standoff held for a long moment. Darnell could see the calculations happening behind the manager's eyes. The assessment of the situation, the consideration of options, the decision tree branching out in real time. Then finally, the smile cracked. "She's an employee. She's not being held against her will. If you don't leave, I'm calling the police." "Good." Darnell pulled out his phone. "Because I already called them. They should be here any minute." The manager's face went pale. The police arrived 7 minutes later. 2 units, 4 officers, responding to what was now being treated as something more than a routine welfare check. Darnell explained the situation to the lead officer, a sergeant named Martinez, who listened without interrupting. King and Prophet backed him up, describing what they'd observed from the parking lot. The girls flinching, the manager's hovering presence, the tension that had been visible even from 50 feet away. "And you're sure she mouthed the word help?" Martinez asked. "I'm sure. Could have been something else. Hello. Hey, something misheard." "It wasn't misheard. I know what I saw." Martinez studied him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "All right, let's talk to her." They found the girl in the break room, sitting on a plastic chair, hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the floor. The manager was with her, standing by the door like a guard. "Sir, I need you to step outside," Martinez said. "I'm her supervisor. I should be present. Outside, now." The manager's smile had long since vanished. He looked at the girl, a look that made Darnell's blood run cold, and then walked out. Martinez crouched down in front of the girl. "Hi, I'm Sergeant Martinez. What's your name?" The girl didn't look up. Quote 55. Quote 56. Silence. The girl's hands were trembling again. "Ashley, you're not in trouble. Whatever's going on, we're here to help. But I need you to tell me the truth." More silence. Darnell felt his heart sinking. She was too scared to talk. Whatever hold that manager had over her, it was too strong. She was going to deny everything, and there would be nothing anyone could do. Then Ashley looked up. Her eyes found Darnell's across the room. She stared at him for a long moment. This stranger, this biker, who hadn't driven away when she'd asked for help, who had stayed, who had brought reinforcements, who was still here, still watching, still refusing to let her disappear. And then she started talking. Her name was Ashley Brennan. She was 21 years old. She'd been held captive for 8 months. The story came out in fragments, between sobs and silences, with Martinez guiding her gently through the worst of it. She'd been taken from a bus stop in Memphis, promised a job, promised a new life. Instead, she'd ended up here, working at a fast food restaurant during the day, locked in a back room at night, controlled by a man who wasn't really a manager at all. She'd tried to signal for help before, twice. Both times the customers had driven away without a second glance. "I thought you would too," she told Darnell later, when the paramedics had checked her out and the FBI had arrived and the manager was in handcuffs in the back of a police car. "I almost didn't try, but something about the way you looked at me, I thought maybe you'd actually see." "I saw," Darnell said, "and I wasn't going anywhere." "Why? You don't even know me." Darnell thought about the question, about the gut feeling that had made him stay, about the calls he'd made, the brothers who'd come, the refusal to drive away even when driving away would have been easier. "Because my grandmother taught me something when I was a kid," he said finally. She said, "Darnell, this world is full of people who look right through other people, like they're not there. Don't you ever be one of those people." And I never forgot that. Ashley's eyes filled with tears. Quote, 66. Quote, 67. If Bike Diaries has become part of your week, consider joining the channel membership. Just a couple bucks a month keeps these stories coming. Links below. And hit that hype button if you haven't already. Now back to the story. The investigation revealed that Ashley wasn't the only victim. The restaurant had been a front, one node, in a network that stretched across 3 states. The man who'd called himself a manager was actually a coordinator, responsible for moving victims between locations, keeping them compliant, making sure they stayed invisible, even while working in plain sight. 2 other victims were recovered from a house 20 miles away. 3 more were identified through documents found on the coordinator's phone. By the time the FBI finished unraveling the network, 11 people had been rescued, all because a biker at a drive-thru window had paid attention. Darnell gave his statement, answered questions, cooperated with everything the investigators needed. He didn't want recognition or credit. He just wanted to know that Ashley was safe, that the people who'd hurt her were going to pay, and that nobody else would end up in that back room. The Black Knights made sure of all 3. They checked in on Ashley during her recovery, bringing groceries and offering rides to appointments. When she finally got her own apartment, her first real home in almost a year, they helped her move in. When she decided to go back to school, Deacon's wife helped her apply for scholarships. She wasn't their responsibility. They didn't owe her anything. But that wasn't how the Black Knights operated. When you were part of their world, even briefly, even by accident, you were family. And family didn't abandon family. 6 months later, Darnell pulled into a coffee shop parking lot in Baton Rouge and found a familiar face waiting for him. Ashley looked different now, healthier, stronger. Her hair was shorter, her posture straighter, her eyes no longer carrying that haunted look he'd first seen through a drive-thru window. "Thanks for meeting me," she said. "Anytime. What's on your mind?" They sat at a picnic table outside, coffee growing cold between them, while Ashley told him what she'd been thinking. Quote 70. She looked at him. To quote 71. Darnell was quiet for a moment. Then he said, quote 72. Quote 73. Quote 74. He leaned forward. Quote 75. Ashley nodded slowly. Quote 76. Darnell smiled. Quote 77. Quote 70. Quote 79. Darnell shook his head. Quote, "Ah!" Ashley was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. A real smile. The first one Darnell had ever seen from her. Quote 81. Quote 82. The organization was called Second Chances, and it trained survivors to become advocates, people who could spot the signs of exploitation, reach out to victims, and help them find their way to freedom. Ashley threw herself into the work with a dedication that surprised everyone except Darnell. She spoke at churches and community centers, at truck stops and rest areas, at anywhere people might encounter someone who needed help. She told her story without flinching, described what she'd survived without sugarcoating, and always ended with the same message. If you see something wrong, don't drive away. Stay. Pay attention. Make a phone call. You might be the only chance someone has. Darnell came to as many events as he could, sometimes alone, sometimes with his brothers from the Black Knights. They'd become unofficial partners with second chances, helping with security at events, spreading awareness through their networks, making sure that the people who needed to hear Ashley's message actually heard it. "You changed my life," she told him once, after a particularly emotional speaking event. "You know that, right?" "You changed mine too. You reminded me why I ride." "Why's that?" Darnell looked out at the parking lot, where a dozen Harleys gleamed in the afternoon sun, their riders gathered in small groups, laughing and talking and being family, because the road takes you places you don't expect, introduces you to people you never would have met, gives you chances to make a difference that you never would have had if you'd stayed home. He smiled. "I was just going through a drive-thru that night, getting dinner, and I ended up finding something I didn't know I was looking for." "What's that?" "Proof that paying attention matters. That one person can change everything. That my grandmother was right all along." Ashley smiled. "She sounds like a wise woman." "She was, and she would have loved you." Thank you for watching this story about a biker who didn't drive away when a girl mouthed, quote, 94 through a drive-thru window. It was inspired by real cases where alert citizens have rescued victims of terrible situations simply by trusting their instincts and refusing to look away. If you see something that doesn't feel right, a person who seems scared, a signal you can't quite explain, a situation that makes your gut clench, don't drive away. Stay. Pay attention. Make a phone call. You might be the only chance someone has. Subscribe to Bike Diaries. Hit that hype button to boost this video. And if you want to support what we do, the membership link is below. Share this with everyone who needs to remember that one person paying attention can change everything. The National Human Trafficking Hotline is 1-888-3737-888. If you see something suspicious, call 911. Ashley Brennan is 24 now. She's a full-time advocate with Second Chances, traveling the country to share her story and train others to recognize the signs. She's helped identify and rescue 14 victims in the past 2 years. 14 people who might still be trapped if she hadn't decided to turn her pain into purpose. Darnell Washington still rides the same route past that McDonald's on his way home from Houston. The restaurant has new management now, new employees, a new feeling entirely. But every time he passes it, he thinks about Ashley, about the word she mouthed through a window, about the gut feeling that told him to stay. And he remembers what his grandmother taught him all those years ago. This world is full of people who look right through other people, like they're not there. Don't ever be one of those people. He never has been. He never will be.